So hello friends, welcome back to my tutorial, and in this video we'll be looking at the CRUD operation onto the database part 2. So let's quickly move to the coding part, and this is what we have left behind into the previous video, and let's move ahead and perform the CRUD operation onto the other tables. So we are having the city, state and reg user table. So let's move quickly ahead and perform the CRUD operation onto the state table. So now it's time to go to the admin controller, as now we are doing all the things into the admin controller. So inside the admin controller, let me close the all other views, and inside the admin controller we are having only one view, that is the index. So let me just close all those things so it creates the less confusion. So I'll be opening the index, and now we require some more views to perform the CRUD operation. So the views are like add a state, which will be used to add the state, and of course it will return the view. Then same thing for action result, add state, then delete state, and of course it also returns the view. And again we required the update, so upd state, that is update state, and of course it also returns the view. So I just need to write down the return view, as it also returning the view, and I just misspelled it, and we need to write down the return view, round bracket start over and semicolon. So now for add I want it to be secured, so let me write down the http post, and I hope that now you know the meaning of this attributes and everything. I required the secure one, so http post everywhere, and we have stored the our dbml framework inside the models. So let me add one more line here, so using application name and dot models, as we have done in the previous section, and of course one object to perform all those things. So we need to write down something like object of that. So the name of the database is testdb data context, then db is the object, new testdb data context. So on to the index view, we required all the tables data. So here for state, let me just gather the information. So we can do something like viewback dot state data. So inside that I'll be storing the state data. So for that db dot states dot to list, this way we can fetch all the data of that state, and we can do same thing for the city, but I'll be not doing it now. So let's save it and quickly move to the index. So here instead of this we need to now write down the logic to print those data. So I'll be writing down the logic, and I want it to be print into the table format, but before that I'll be like to have one heading for the data. So I'll be taking the h4 and I'll be writing down something like state data, and let's move ahead and print those data. So I'll be following the table structure inside that border 1, and we required cell spacing to 5. You can customize it in your own way, and I'll be required tr and of course the td. So we'll be taking the td, so it has the two fields. So the first one is, let's have a look onto the fields. So we are having the sid, so I'll be naming it as sid and as name. Then we required the action, that is for delete purpose, and last it's time to print those data. So I'll be taking the razor syntax and for each and curly bracket of course. Then I'll be writing down the for each loop, like where as in viewbag dot state data, and here we need to do the same thing. So like you can copy this thing, and let's move ahead and print this here. So instead of sid we required the s dot or we can say @ s.sid. Same thing here, something like s.asName, and let the action be as it is. And I'll be just running this view directly from the admin controller because I haven't implemented the session part, so I can run any of the page from my application. But if you have implemented the session part, you need to take care about running the pages. So as soon as the process has been completed, we can see our table structure is generated, and of course there is no data present here, so you won't see any data. So instead of cell spacing, I'll be taking the cell padding, and let me refresh here. So and let me see the check that if it looks good or not. Okay, so the things are working properly, and now it's time to add the data. So for that, first of all we need to write down the logic for adding the data, and for that of course I'll be taking the form collection to collect all the information. So form collection appc, and from that we require the state name. So where state name is equal to appc of as name, and here we need to write down the try catch block to avoid the application crashes, and curly bracket here I need to just write down the app exception e, and of course the response is very important. So viewbag dot response is equal to we need to write down something like record inserted. So record inserted, and if not, then we need to just write down the error. So I'll be writing here something like something went wrong. So I want to insert the data. For that we need to first make an object of the state class. So state s is equal to new state, and s.asName, as the sid is auto incremented, so we don't require to provide that. Then we need to add this to collection. So db.states.insert on submit, and we need to pass the object as parameter, and then we need to write down db.submit changes, so it can persist the response into the table. So right click onto the add state, and now we need to add the view. So I'll be adding this view, and as soon as the view is added, we just need to write down the p tag so we can print the response. So here I'll be just writing down the viewbag dot response. So now we can add this, and of course one href for move back to the or we can write I think we should do it here. So we can write down the logic to go back to the data display page. So here we can say like index or go to list. So as I told you that if we made some changes into the controller, we need to rerun the application, but for the views we don't require that. So this is the logic for the form collection, and before running the application we need to provide the form to insert the data. So I'll be writing down as br, and here we will be providing the form to insert the data. So let's quickly do it. So I'll be taking the form, and the method should be post. We require the action where we provide something like admin slash. Okay, so here we also need to change here something like only one slash. So here admin slash add state, and of course we need to close the form, and then it's time to write down the field. So input type text, and we need to take the name as name, the same way as we have taken into the form collection, and of course input type submit to submit the data, and the value should be add state. And here for the better viewing purpose we will writing down something like state name. Let's save it and run this application. I'll be directly running from the index view. So as soon as the application is executed, we can see the index view, so where we need to provide the state name. So here we can see one interface for add the state, and let's add the state and let's check that if everything is working well or not, and if any errors occurs we can solve it. So I'll be adding a state like Gujarat, then click on add, and we can say record inserted. Go to the list and we can see one record is printed. Now instead of action we required the delete logic. So I'll be quickly move back to the admin controller and then right click onto the delete state and then select on add view. Click on add and your delete state add has been view has been added. And same thing we need to do it here. So I'll be just copy those things from here. Just copy it and paste it here and save it. So now here we need to write down the logic for delete the record. So inside here we require the same thing. So I'll be just copying this thing, so we don't need to write down the logic again and again. So instead of state name we're just fetching the state ID, so that is s id, and of course we need to provide the form collection here, that is fc. And instead of this we need to make some changes here. So like let's remove these things, and instead of record inserted we should write down something like record deleted. So here we need to find the particular record the way we have find into the authentication. So states dot where, or we can directly use the find method or something like single or default. So we can also use the single or default method, but we'll be using the where condition for a better understanding purpose. So here I'll be using the x points expression, that is x points to sid dot equals, and that is state id dot to list. It might generate the error for the conversion, as it says list to state. It says the returns the value indicating where. Okay, so here we need to write down something like where. And now the thing is we need to delete the record. So we have find the particular record here. Now it's time to delete the record, so we can write down something like delete dot means db dot states dot remove, or we can say delete on submit, and then we can find the object, and at the last we need to write down the submit changes. So what we have done here, what it says the best overloaded method. Okay, so we have passed the wrong collection, that's why it says the that's why it raises the issue here. So what we need to do, we need to provide the state as, and instead of to list we can say dot single or default round bracket start over and the semicolon, and the issue is solved here. But whenever we run the application we need to check if everything goes well or not. So the delete logic is written here, and now we also need to pass the parameter to delete those things. So I'll be taking the form again, then method should be post, and then the action, then dot dot slash, that is parent directory admin slash del state. And here I'll be just over the form, then we need to write down the submit button. So input type submit, and then the value should be delete, and we need to submit the value of, or we can say id inside the hidden field. So I'll be just writing input type hidden, and value should be the sid, and the name should be sid. So here we need to write down s dot sid. So whenever we click onto the delete button, it calls the del state and passes one value, that is sid, and we are fetching that particular sid into our controller like this way, and then we are searching for a particular record and then deleting the object, and then persisting the entry into the our database. So let me just run this application and let's have a look that does the everything is working properly or not. So as soon as the processing has been completed, we can see the output here, and we need to add one entry, that is taste, and let's click on add. So it says record inserted, go to list, and I want to delete this record. So if we click on the delete button, it says record deleted, go to list, and yes, we can see the record has been deleted. So now it's time to update the record. So for that, let's quickly move to the coding part and perform the updation. So here for updation, let me design a view so we can perform the updation, and I'll be taking the same thing here from the form, so we don't need to write down the code again and again. So here I'll be taking the input type text, and of course the value should be @as name, and the name should be as name, and instead of delete, it should be go to the update. The post should be remain the same, and instead of update it says delete. So let's go back to the controller and right click onto the update, add view, and as soon as the view has been added, we need to just write down a simple line the way we have written into this page. So just copy it and paste it onto the update. Let's save it, and let's go to the controller, and the same thing we need to do for the updation part. So I'll be just copying this thing, as we don't need to write down the code again and again. So let's take form collection. We have find the record. What we need to do, we just need to change the properties. So we also need to gather some more information, like where as name is equal to abc of as name. We can only change the as name. So as dot as name is equal to as name, and then submit changes, and I hope so this will update the record. So we need to write down record updated, or else something went wrong. So let's quickly run this application and let's have a look that the logic executes properly or not. And if something goes wrong, we will solve the errors, and if not, then the record should be updated. So as soon as the processing has been completed, the output will appear, and we are having the update button and the value written inside the text boxes, and the delete also. So let me add one record like Maharashtra, and let's click onto the add state. It says record inserted, go to the list, and let's add one more record, that is taste. Let's add the record and go to the list, and instead of this I need to change it to Assam. So let's say Assam, and click onto the update. It says record updated, go to the list, and now we can see the Assam is updated here. So this is the way we can update, delete, and insert the record for a table without the foreign key. And I hope so that you are getting an idea about how we can perform the CRUD operation onto the table without the foreign key. So I think this is all for this video, and we'll see you in my next video.